So the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton has just ended 0-0, and again we're seeing Liverpool struggling in this Premier League season. And the game itself actually was quite an interesting microcosm of some of the problems that Liverpool have had to deal with. So let's have a look at that game in more detail. So on the board in front of me, we've got the two teams as they lined up on the pitch. Both teams actually using similar structures, so a 4-3-3. But let's start off by looking at what Liverpool are doing to try and generate goals. So the first thing to notice is these three players, the front three for Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz. Now these are a really, really dangerous front three in terms of transitional moments. So if a high line is played by the opposition, you'll get these players just in behind, and they can just cause devastating problems for any opposition. And so an opposition has to prevent those sorts of transitional moments, and the way that you do that is usually just by sitting in. So make sure your defence are covering nice and deep in these sorts of situations, and then worry about scoring goals in your own time. Now this means that Liverpool have to think of a different way of attacking. They can't just be transitional, they're going to have to try and build up around the box a little bit more. And so what we see from Liverpool in recent seasons is them trying to just pull the opposition defence apart as much as possible. So more recently we've started seeing Salah pulling out onto the wide areas, and this sort of pins the fullback here. We've also got Darwin Núñez, who's a bit more of a traditional striker, a 9, a big man, and so he's going to attract the attention of the two centre-backs. And then you've just created a lot of space now in this back line that you can try and exploit in different ways. And we've seen Liverpool do that in a few different manners. So the first thing that we've seen a lot of this season is actually Luis Diaz inverting a little bit here, pulling in between the centre-back and the full-back. And this generates space here for Tsimikas, the fullback, to get into these sorts of areas, maybe go down the line and play crosses into the box from there. There's also this space over here that's generated by Salah pulling the fullback across. And as we've seen in recent seasons, Liverpool like to get their centre midfielder over here, just pushing into this space and being able to play in these sorts of triangles. We know that Alexander-Arnold is really great from these half spaces. He can play these really dangerous balls into the box here to the back post and cause problems there as well. So this is all about how Liverpool are trying to generate space that they can exploit and cause problems for the opposition. So these two ways of attacking show up really nicely in the data, and I've got a couple of viz from John Muller at The Athletic here to show you what I mean by this. So on the board in front of me here, we've just got a plot just showing you where Liverpool were attacking last season in terms of the channels. So we've got a left channel, central channel and right channel. And as you can see, Liverpool really dominate their attack in those wide areas. As we've already said, they've got those transitional players like Mohamed Salah and Luis Diaz, who can just cause huge amounts of problems if you can get them in behind or even isolated against their fullbacks. So a lot of Liverpool's attack is focused down these areas. The other thing that we can see is actually over the last few seasons, as we've said, Liverpool have had to change their attack a little bit because teams are sitting deeper against them. To stop those transitions, what they've had to do is develop a little bit more creativity in the central area. So another viz from John Muller here, and showing you the last few seasons in terms of where Liverpool are generating attacking value from. So the areas where you can see green, that's where a lot of the attacking value is coming from. So 2019-20, everything is going through Mohamed Salah, as you can see. 2021, you can see it's a slight shift now into more central areas. And then when we get to 21-22 season, you can see that a lot more generation is coming from the central area, and Liverpool looking really dangerous on this right-hand side. And a lot of this central movement that we're seeing from Liverpool in terms of attacking creativity is coming from one man, that is Thiago Alcantara, who arrived from Bayern Munich. So he became a really important foil for Liverpool when oppositions were sitting deep. He's the creative hub who can help them to score goals in other ways. So if we go back to the tactics board then, there's just a couple of things that we need to focus on in particular, because there was a couple of areas that have changed from last season when Liverpool was so dangerous to this season. So the first one is, in this lineup we have Fabio Carvalho, a young player who's just joined Liverpool, playing instead of Thiago. So last season we would have had Thiago in this sort of area, and he would have got the ball. He is able to generate lots of creativity from the central spaces, as we've already said, and by playing Carvalho instead, because Thiago is injured, Liverpool haven't been able to have quite so much danger from those central spaces. The other thing to talk about is Darwin Núñez. So we've already said that Darwin Núñez is a traditional 9 sort of striker. He is a very good player in transition as well, as we've said, but when it comes to sitting in these sorts of situations where Liverpool are camping outside the opposition box, he's slightly different from the options that Liverpool have had before, because in previous seasons they've either played Firmino over here, who, as we know, is a really high-tech player, and also Sadio Mane last season, who started playing in the central areas before he moved to Bayern Munich. Now, both of these players are high-tech players. They have the ability to take the ball down in congested boxes, get shots away quickly, or do things with the ball in very little space whatsoever, which is very different to Darwin Núñez, who is less of a high-tech player. He's a lot more about, as we've said, transition, getting on the ball quickly, running through into space. In the box, he is more of a traditional striker, so he can get into the back post for those crosses from Alexander-Arnold and cause problems in that way. But in terms of the high-tech stuff, he's just not going to offer the same amount of stuff that both Mane and Firmino are offering. And so in this match in particular, because of these two players, Liverpool had a bit of a problem. They weren't able to actually generate any kind of creativity from the central spaces at all, and it meant that they were less dangerous than you would have hoped. And actually in the second half, we saw Klopp bring off Carvalho, who was injured. They brought on Firmino and went more towards a 4-2-3-1. Firmino just sat in behind Núñez and was able to do a lot more of the creative work closer to the striker and try and get the upside of both of those two players. But it wasn't just because of Liverpool's personnel that they were struggling. Frank Lampard, the Everton manager, also did a few things that caused Liverpool problems all the way through the game. So let's take a little bit of a look at what he was doing. So we've already said that when you're playing against Liverpool, you have to try and prevent them from being able to transition against you. So what we were seeing from Frank Lampard is this fairly conservative 4-3-3, which became a 4-5-1 out of possession. And if you can sit in this sort of situation here, then you're going to cause Liverpool the sorts of problems that we have already talked about, where they have to be creative, they have to generate chances themselves in the box. But Lampard wasn't just happy to sit deep, because if you sit deep, then you just invite pressure the whole game, and eventually teams as good as Liverpool will just cause you problems. So Lampard wanted to cause problems further up the field, and to do this, he knew two things about Liverpool. One is that they're dangerous in the wide areas, as we've already seen, so he has to make sure that he gives a certain amount of coverage in the wide areas to stop them from transitioning quickly. He also knows that they're less dangerous in the central spaces without someone like Thiago. So Lampard actually adopted a form of pressing that we usually see from a team like Liverpool, and this form of pressing allowed the ball to be built up through the central spaces for Liverpool, but stopped them in the wide area. So let's just take a quick look at that. So when Liverpool are trying to build up from the back, what you would usually expect is if the ball goes out to a fullback, you'd have the wide player coming across here and pressing them. And often if you do this, you can generate these sorts of situations where you can play a sort of quick passing sequence and the ball ends up with the wide player here. And now if you've got someone like Mohamed Salah on the ball, 1v1 against Mykolenko, you're in a lot of trouble. So what we saw from Lampard was, rather than having a press where the wide player goes towards the fullback, we were actually seeing the two central midfielders doing a lot of the high pressing in this situation. So Alex Iwobi or Tom Davies pushing into these sorts of areas when the centre-back or the fullback has the ball and forcing them wide in that sense. Now this obviously leaves space in the central areas, but what it does do is that it allows you to then double up in these wide areas, and it means that your wide players don't get pulled too far forward, and so that you're getting these sorts of 1v1 isolations in these areas. So you're making sure that you're keeping your wide players around the danger players for Liverpool. And then if the ball does go through the middle, then as we've said, there's less creativity there, and you're making sure that rather than the ball being moved into the middle and then out to the wide areas, you're actually making sure that there's plenty of coverage on those players. So Liverpool just running through the middle and then coming to a bit of a halt. And in doing this, by stopping those dangerous transitions down the wing, then what happens is that when the ball does go forward, Everton have plenty of time then to fall back into this sort of situation, as we saw at the beginning, where they're covering plenty of space here, they're compacting everything, and they're stopping Liverpool from generating any chances. And Everton were actually quite dangerous in these sorts of situations as well. Because by sitting deep, Everton knew that the best way of attacking Liverpool was to hit them on the counter. And actually I've got some data in front of me on the board here which shows counter-attack goals conceded this season, Premier League 22-23. And the two teams at the top of this list are Everton and Liverpool. As you can see, they've conceded 2 counter-attacking goals each. Now, according to Opta, a counter-attacking goal is when you turn the ball over in your own half and then you score from there. So Everton knew that if they were going to be sitting a little bit deeper and then looking to decompress quickly, then Liverpool could be open for that kind of attack. Now obviously the game finished 0-0, so there was no goal scored in this way, but there were a few examples of Everton being able to pick the ball up and counter-attack against Liverpool and cause them problems. And I've got one example in screenshots here on the board. So this is around the 64th minute. This was probably the most dangerous chance that Everton created in the game, and as you can see, they just picked the ball up in their own box. We've got Onana on the ball here, and he's got players in front of him. Liverpool are pushed right high up, and what's going to happen is we're going to see a counter-attacking opportunity. So Onana is going to play the ball directly to Demarai Gray here. Demarai Gray is a one-on-one with James Milner, who jumps in, but Demarai Gray is able to get past him, and this just opens up Liverpool for Everton. So we've got it here now, Demarai Gray running down the left-hand side of the field. There's 5 Everton players here, and there's only 3 Liverpool players here. So Liverpool are just completely open in a counter-attacking situation. Demarai Gray is able to run towards the edge of the box and play the ball across the box. Anthony Gordon tries to get a foot on it, doesn't happen. It falls to Neal Maupay, but as you can see, there are other options here as well. So we've got Iwobi here and Onana as well. You would expect a team in the Premier League to probably score from this situation. Maupay does actually have a good shot, but it gets saved by Alisson, but maybe it would have been smarter to play it across to one of these 2 players who would just have a tap in then against the goal. So this performance by Frank Lampard's Everton was a very good way of causing problems for Liverpool in terms of their attack, but also causing problems for them in defensive situations as well, and these transitional moments just opening Liverpool out. So Liverpool have a lot of problems to deal with, and if they don't deal with them soon, then they're really going to struggle this season.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.